The Kaleth Empire had conquered 17 star systems in the past century. Their massive fleet ships, each the size of a small moon, cast shadows across entire planets as they arrived to claim new worlds. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's Edge, his four eyes gleaming with satisfaction as Earth appeared on the main screen. "Such a small blue world," he hissed through his translator. "Hard to believe these humans have caused us so much trouble." The bridge crew of reptilian Kaleth warriors nodded in agreement. For months, human ships had been hitting their supply lines, rescuing prisoners, and generally making the Empire look weak. The High Command had finally decided enough was enough. Earth would be caged, its people enslaved, and humanity would serve as an example to other rebellious species. Captain Sarah Chen watched the alien fleet approach from the bridge of the defense station Olympus. The orbital platform was humanity's last line of defense, bristling with every weapon Earth could muster. Around her, technicians worked frantically at their stations, but everyone knew the truth. They were outnumbered 50-1. "Ma'am, incoming. Transmission from the lead ship," reported Lieutenant Hayes, his voice tight with fear. "Put it through," Sarah ordered, straightening her uniform. Admiral Vextar's scaled face filled the screen, his expression cold and calculating. "Humans of Earth, you have interfered with the Kaleth Empire for the last time. Surrender now, and you will be granted the mercy of slavery. Resist, and we will turn your world into glass." Sarah looked directly into those alien eyes. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth Defense. You want our world? Come and take it." The transmission cut off, and Vextar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Brave words from such a primitive species. Begin the assault. The first wave of Kaleth fighters screamed toward Earth's defenses. Humanity's ships, small and fast compared to the massive alien vessels, darted between the enemy formations like angry wasps. Earth's pilots had learned to fight dirty during the guerrilla war, using their ship's superior maneuverability to strike and vanish. Commander Jake Morrison pushed his fighter into a dive toward a Kaleth destroyer. His wingman, Maria Santos, stayed close as they weaved through the enemy's defensive fire. The aliens had better shields and bigger guns, but their ships were slow and predictable. "Target their sensor arrays," Jake called over the comm. "Blind them before we hit the engines." The human fighters swarmed the destroyer like piranhas, each pilot striking a specific target before dancing away from return fire. Within minutes, the massive ship was listing helplessly, its bridge crew screaming orders no one could hear through their damaged communications. But for every Kaleth ship the humans disabled, 2 more took its place. The math was simple and brutal. Earth's defenders were running out of ships, ammunition, and pilots. On the surface of Earth, emergency broadcasts played on every screen and speaker. Families huddled in their homes as the sky above flickered with the light of distant explosions. In military command centers, generals watched helplessly as their orbital defenses were slowly overwhelmed. President Williams stood in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by advisors who had no good news to give. Reports flooded in from around the globe. The Kaleth were landing troops in major cities. London was under siege. Tokyo's defense grid had fallen. New York's skyscrapers burned as alien dropships descended like mechanical vultures. "How long before they reach the bunker facilities?" the president asked. General Harrison consulted his tablet, his face grim. 6 hours, maybe 8 if our ground forces can slow them down." Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked frantically in a laboratory that officially didn't exist. For 3 years, her team had been working on Project Zeus, humanity's most classified research program. The project had been deemed too dangerous for field testing, too unpredictable for deployment. But as the sounds of alien weapons echoed through the facility's upper levels, Elena knew they were out of options. "Doctor, we're reading massive energy spikes from the alien ships," her assistant Dr. Park called out. "They're charging some kind of superweapon." Elena's hands flew over her controls. The Zeus protocol had never been fully tested. The computer models suggested it would work, but they also suggested it might kill everyone on Earth in the process. She thought about her daughter, safe in a bunker in Montana, and made her choice. "Initialize the Zeus protocol," she ordered. Full authorization, my personal code. Doctor, the safety locks are there for a reason, Dr. Park protested. We don't know what this will do to the planet's magnetic field, to our atmosphere. We know what the aliens will do. Elena cut him off. They'll turn Earth into a slave world. Whatever Zeus does to us, it has to be better than that. Above them, Admiral Vextar prepared to deliver humanity's death blow. The Empire's planet cracker weapon charged slowly, gathering energy from the fleet's power cores. Soon Earth's major cities would be nothing but smoking craters, and the surviving humans would beg for the mercy of chains. Sir, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's surface, reported a Kaleth sensor operator. Vextar barely glanced at the display. Probably their primitive nuclear weapons. Our shields will hold. But deep in the Earth's core, something ancient was stirring. The Zeus protocol didn't just tap into human technology. It reached into the planet itself, into forces that had slept since the world was young. Elena's team had discovered something in the deep rock samples, something that responded to the right electromagnetic frequencies. The first sign that something was wrong came when compasses around the world began spinning wildly. Birds fell from the sky, confused by the sudden shift in magnetic fields. Aurora lights danced across the equator as the planet's electromagnetic field fluctuated like a heartbeat. On the bridge of the Dominion's edge, warning alarms began to blare. The ship's navigation systems flickered and died. Weapons targeting computers crashed and rebooted. The mighty Kaleth fleet, which had conquered star systems with ease, suddenly found itself flying blind. What's happening? Vextar roared. But before anyone could answer, the Earth's magnetic field erupted outward like an invisible tsunami. The wave of electromagnetic force struck the alien fleet with the power of a solar storm, frying circuits and overloading power cores across hundreds of ships. And in the depths of space, something vast and patient began to stir, awakened by humanity's desperate call for help. The aliens had made a fatal mistake. They thought they were attacking a defenseless world. They didn't realize they were poking a sleeping god. The electromagnetic pulse that erupted from Earth struck the Kaleth fleet like an invisible hammer. Ships that had traveled between stars for centuries suddenly found themselves powerless, drifting in the void as their advanced systems failed one by one. Admiral Vextar gripped his command chair as emergency lighting flickered on throughout the bridge. Engineering report. He snarled into his comm unit. The response crackled with static. Sir, we've lost main power, backup power, and tertiary systems. The humans somehow generated an electromagnetic field stronger than anything in our databases. Our ships are dead in space. Captain Sarah Chen couldn't believe what she was seeing through the viewports of the Olympus station. The massive alien fleet, which moments before had been preparing to destroy Earth, now floated helplessly like metallic corpses. Emergency lights blinked weakly across their hulls, the only sign that anyone was still alive inside. All human ships, this is Chen. She broadcast on all frequencies. The enemy fleet is disabled. Move in and secure as many vessels as possible. Priority targets are command ships and anything that looks like it might contain prisoners. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at her instruments in the underground laboratory, hardly daring to believe the readings. The Zeus protocol had worked beyond her wildest expectations. The planetary electromagnetic field had not only disabled the alien ships, but had somehow synchronized with Earth's natural magnetic field in ways that defied current scientific understanding. Doctor, we're reading massive energy signatures from deep within the planet, Dr. Park reported, his voice filled with awe and fear. It's like something down there is waking up. Elena pulled up geological surveys on her screen. For decades, scientists had detected anomalies in Earth's core, strange metallic formations that didn't match any known elements. Most researchers had dismissed them as sensor errors or natural phenomena. But now, as she watched the energy readings spike, Elena began to suspect they had been very wrong. Commander Jake Morrison led a boarding party onto the Kaleth flagship. The alien ship's corridors were dark except for the faint glow of emergency strips. The air recycling systems had failed, leaving the atmosphere thick and stale. His team moved carefully through the ship, their weapons ready, but the aliens they encountered seemed more confused than hostile. It's like they've never seen anything like this before, reported Sergeant Williams over the comm. These guys have conquered half the galaxy, but one electromagnetic pulse and they're helpless. Jake kicked open the door to what looked like a detention area. Inside, he found exactly what he'd hoped for. Human prisoners, dozens of them, locked in energy cages that no longer functioned. The captives looked up at him with expressions of disbelief and desperate hope. "Earth Defense Force," Jake announced. "You're going home." Among the prisoners was Dr. Marcus Webb, a xenobiologist who had been captured during one of the first Kaleth raids 6 months earlier. As Jake's team escorted him toward the ship's hangar bay, Marcus grabbed the commander's arm. "You don't understand," Marcus whispered urgently. "The Kaleth aren't just conquerors. They're running from something that destroyed their home system. They've been searching for a new homeworld and they thought Earth would be perfect." "Well, they thought wrong," Jake replied grimly. But Marcus shook his head. "That's just it, they were right. Earth is perfect, but not for them. The Kaleth have instruments we can't even imagine, and they detected something in Earth's geological structure that made them think this planet was uninhabited by any advanced civilization." "What kind of something?" Jake asked. "They called it a dormant planetary consciousness. Most of their scientists dismissed it as a natural phenomenon, but their religious caste believed Earth was the resting place of an ancient god. Back on Earth's surface, the effects of the Zeus protocol were becoming apparent in ways no one had expected. Animals around the world began behaving strangely, migrating in patterns that made no sense. Whales that had been scattered across the ocean suddenly began swimming toward a single point in the Pacific. Birds flew in perfect formations that spelled out geometric patterns when viewed from above. In major cities, electronic devices began picking up signals that shouldn't exist. Radio telescopes detected pulses of energy emanating from deep within the Earth itself, following mathematical sequences that suggested intelligence. Scientists who had spent their careers studying the planet suddenly realized they knew almost nothing about the world beneath their feet. President Williams convened an emergency session with the world's top scientists via secure video link. The faces on the screen ranged from excited to terrified as they reported their findings. "The electromagnetic signatures are unlike anything in our databases," reported Dr. Chen from the Beijing Institute of Technology. "The patterns suggest a vast network of metallic structures throughout Earth's mantle, all connected to a central hub near the planet's core. Are we talking about some kind of ancient alien technology?" asked the president. Dr. Petrov from Moscow shook his head. "The formations are older than complex life on Earth. Whatever built this system was here billions of years ago, long before humans, before dinosaurs, possibly before life itself." Elena watched the discussion from her underground laboratory, but her attention was focused on her instruments. The energy readings from the planet's core were not just increasing, they were organizing, forming patterns that reminded her of neural networks. It was as if the entire planet was thinking, processing information, making decisions. Dr. Park called out, his voice tight with concern. "We're reading movement in the core structures. Something massive is shifting down there." Above them, the crippled Kaleth fleet was about to discover just how massive. Admiral Vextar had managed to restore partial power to his flagship and was attempting to evacuate his crew to the few ships that still had functional engines. But as his engineers worked frantically to repair damaged systems, new readings began appearing on their sensors. "Sir, we're detecting seismic activity on the planet's surface," reported a technician. "Magnitude 8.0 earthquakes along every major fault line, but they're not random. They're synchronized." Vextar studied the readings with growing alarm. In his centuries of conquest, he had seen many worlds destroy themselves rather than submit to Kaleth rule. Volcanic eruptions, nuclear detonations, atmospheric collapse. Desperate species often chose extinction over slavery. But this was different. The seismic activity wasn't destroying the planet. It was reshaping it. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, tectonic plates that had been stable for millions of years began to shift. But instead of the chaotic destruction typical of earthquakes, the movement was precise, controlled. Ancient structures buried beneath miles of rock and sediment began to rise toward the surface. The first sign of what was coming appeared to ship-based radar systems as a massive object rising from the ocean floor. At first, observers thought it might be an underwater volcano, but as it broke the surface, its artificial nature became unmistakable. A structure the size of Manhattan emerged from the Pacific, its surfaces covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "My God," breathed Captain Chen as she watched the live feed from a nearby destroyer. It's a city. An entire city just rose from the ocean floor. But the Pacific structure was only the beginning. Similar formations began emerging from deep underground sites around the world. In the Sahara Desert, sand dunes shifted and flowed like water, revealing pyramid-like buildings that dwarfed anything built by human hands. In the Amazon rainforest, trees that had stood for centuries stepped aside as if commanded, making way for towers of black metal that reached toward the sky. The Kaleth fleet watched in growing horror as Earth transformed before their eyes. This wasn't a primitive world inhabited by a young species. This was the awakening of something ancient and powerful, something that had been sleeping in the depths of the planet for eons. And as the last of the great structures emerged from their hiding places, a voice spoke across every communication frequency in the galaxy, in every language simultaneously, with the power of a living world behind it. Who dares disturb the children of Zeus? The voice that echoed across space carried with it the weight of geological ages. Every human on Earth felt it resonate in their bones, while the Kaleth fleet recoiled as if struck by a physical blow. Admiral Vextar's communication systems registered the transmission as coming from everywhere at once, from the planet itself, from the ancient structures rising from Earth's surface, from the very fabric of space around them. Impossible, Vextar whispered, his scaled hands trembling as he gripped his command console. Planetary consciousnesses are myths, legends told by primitive species to explain natural phenomena. But his scientific instruments told a different story. The energy readings emanating from Earth were off every scale his people had devised. The electromagnetic signatures suggested a neural network spanning the entire planet, with processing power that dwarfed the combined computing ability of the entire Kaleth Empire. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched her instruments in amazement as data flooded her screens. The Zeus protocol hadn't just awakened something in Earth's core, it had established a connection. Her laboratory's computers were now interfacing directly with whatever intelligence lay beneath the planet's surface, and the information flowing through those connections was staggering. "Doctor, we're receiving what appears to be a historical database," Dr. Park reported, his voice filled with awe, records dating back billions of years. According to this data, Earth was once part of a vast interstellar civilization called the Olympian Collective. Elena pulled up the files on her main screen. Ancient star maps showed Earth as one node in a network spanning thousands of worlds, each planet connected by quantum communication links that allowed instantaneous contact across galactic distances. The civilization that built this network had technology that made current human science look like children playing with sticks. "What happened to them?" Helena asked. The data stream shifted, showing images of a great war that spanned multiple galaxies. The Olympians had faced an enemy so terrible that they chose to go into hiding rather than fight directly. One by one, their worlds had gone dark, their planetary consciousness entering deep sleep modes that would last for millions of years. Earth was designed as a nursery world, Dr. Park read from the incoming data, a place where new life could evolve and develop, while the Olympian consciousness slept beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Captain Sarah Chen received the same data transmission on the Olympus station, but her military training focused on more immediate concerns. The ancient structures rising from Earth's surface were not just monuments. They were weapons platforms of unimaginable power. Sensors detected energy signatures that made human nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. All Earth defense ships maintain safe distance from the emerging structures, she broadcast. "We don't know if they can distinguish friend from foe." As if responding to her concern, a new communication channel opened directly in her mind. The voice that spoke was vast and patient, like the slow turning of continents. "Sarah Chen, captain of the vessel Olympus, defender of the human species. You need not fear. We have watched your people grow from simple primates to spacefaring beings. You are our greatest success. Our children who learn to reach for the stars while still maintaining the compassion that defines true civilization." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as understanding flooded through her. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe. They never had been. Earth itself was their guardian, their ancient protector that had guided their evolution across millions of years. The Kaleth fleet, meanwhile, was discovering that their situation had gone from bad to catastrophic. The ships that had been disabled by the electromagnetic pulse found their systems coming back online, but not under their control. Admiral Vextar watched helplessly as his own weapon systems turned toward other Kaleth vessels. "Sir, something is taking control of our ship," reported his chief engineer. "Our computers are being overridden by external signals." Vextar's four eyes widened as he realized what was happening. The planetary consciousness wasn't just defending Earth. It was demonstrating its complete superiority over Kaleth technology. Every ship in the fleet was now under Earth's control, their crews reduced to passengers in their own vessels. A holographic image materialized on the bridge of every Kaleth ship simultaneously. The figure that appeared was humanoid but clearly inhuman, with features that seemed to shift between different alien physiologies. When it spoke, its voice carried the authority of eons. "I am Zeus, guardian consciousness of the world you call Earth. For millions of years, I have slept while life flourished on my surface. I guided the development of countless species, watched them grow and learn, and eventually reach for the stars. Most left peacefully, seeking new worlds to call home. But some, like humanity, chose to stay and become part of something greater." Admiral Vextar found his voice, though it emerged as barely a whisper. What do you want from us?" The hologram's expression remained impassive. "You came here as conquerors, seeking to enslave a species under my protection. Your records show that this is not the first time you have committed such acts. You have destroyed 17 civilizations in your quest for empire." We were fleeing our own destruction," Vextar protested. "Our home system was consumed by a cosmic storm. We needed new worlds to survive. And so you chose to become destroyers rather than builders," Zeus replied. "This is why your species will never know true peace. You take what others have created instead of creating for yourselves." On Earth's surface, the ancient structures continued to rise. The one in the Pacific had grown to the size of a small continent, its surfaces alive with energy patterns that painted the sky in colors that had no names. Similar formations around the world reached toward space like the fingers of a buried giant. Commander Jake Morrison found himself standing on the observation deck of the captured Kaleth flagship, watching the transformation of his homeworld in stunned silence. Dr. Marcus Webb stood beside him, consulting a datapad filled with xenological notes. "The religious caste of the Kaleth were right," Marcus said quietly. "They detected the presence of an ancient god sleeping beneath Earth's surface. But their scientists convinced them it was just unusual geological formations. So what happens now?" Jake asked. Before Marcus could answer, the ship's communication system activated. The voice of Zeus filled the air around them, though it seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Human warriors, you have fought bravely to defend your world, but the time for fighting is ending. Your species stands at a crossroads. You can choose to join the greater community of worlds that spans this galaxy, or you can remain isolated on your single planet. The choice is yours." Jake felt a surge of excitement and terror. "Join how? We barely have the technology to reach our own moon." "Technology can be shared," Zeus replied. "Knowledge can be given freely to those who prove themselves worthy. Your species has demonstrated courage, creativity, and most importantly, the willingness to sacrifice for others. These are the qualities that mark a true civilization." Around the world, similar conversations were taking place as Zeus communicated directly with human leaders, scientists, and ordinary citizens. The offer was simple but staggering in its implications. Humanity could join a galactic community of thousands of species, gaining access to technologies and knowledge beyond their wildest dreams. But there was a price. They would need to prove they could handle such power responsibly. The Kaleth Empire served as a cautionary example of what happened when a species gained advanced technology without developing the wisdom to use it properly. Admiral Vextar listened to these conversations through his ship's intercepted communications, his heart sinking as he realized the magnitude of what his people had lost. By choosing conquest over cooperation, the Kaleth had cut themselves off from this greater community. They were alone in the universe by their own choice. "What will become of us?" he asked Zeus. The ancient consciousness considered the question for a long moment. "Your ships will be returned to you, along with coordinates to uninhabited worlds suitable for Kaleth colonization. You will have the chance to build a new civilization based on creation, rather than destruction. Whether you take that chance is up to you." As if to demonstrate Zeus's power, the disabled Kaleth fleet suddenly found their ships fully operational again. Navigation systems came online, showing routes to distant star systems rich with resources and empty of sentient life. It was a gift of mercy that Vextar's people had never shown their own victims. But as the Caliph fleet prepared to depart, Zeus had one final message for them. Remember this day. Remember that there are forces in this universe far greater than your empire. The next time you encounter a species weaker than yourselves, choose wisdom over conquest. Choose to build rather than destroy. The universe is watching. 3 months had passed since the Caliph fleet limped away from Earth's solar system, their ships bearing the coordinates to empty worlds where they could start fresh. The ancient structures that had risen from Earth's depths now stood like monuments to an older age, their surfaces humming with energy that bent light and space around them. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in what had once been her underground laboratory but was now a gleaming chamber, filled with technology that human science couldn't begin to explain. Crystalline interfaces grew from the walls like living things, responding to thought as much as touch. The Zeus consciousness had begun sharing knowledge with selected humans, and Elena was among the first to receive the gift of understanding. The learning process is overwhelming, she reported to President Williams during their daily briefing. It's not just information being downloaded into our minds. It's like Zeus is teaching us to think in new ways, to perceive reality from a completely different perspective. On her screens, Elena could see data streams that showed the true nature of the galaxy. Thousands of worlds teemed with life, connected by quantum communication networks that allowed instantaneous contact across impossible distances. Trade flowed between civilizations separated by millions of light years. Art, music, and literature crossed species barriers to create cultural exchanges that enriched entire star systems. But there were dark spaces on the galactic map, too. Regions where worlds had gone silent, where promising civilizations had destroyed themselves or been destroyed by others. The Caliph Empire was just one of many aggressive species that had chosen conquest over cooperation, and their path always led to the same destination: isolation and eventual collapse. Captain Sarah Chen had been assigned to oversee humanity's first contact protocols as more alien species began arriving in the Sol system. Ships from the galactic community came not as conquerors but as ambassadors, drawn by Zeus's announcement that Earth had awakened and humanity was ready to join the wider universe. The first to arrive were the Keepers, an ancient species that looked like crystalline trees but moved with fluid grace. Their ambassador, a being who called itself Resonance, communicated through harmonic frequencies that Zeus translated for human understanding. "Your species shows great promise." Resonance hummed as it stood in the Olympus Station's newly constructed diplomatic chamber. To have awakened a planetary guardian is remarkable. Most worlds with such entities remain dormant for millions of years longer. Sarah found herself fascinated by the alien's perspective. "Zeus told us that Earth was designed as a nursery world. Are there others like it?" "Many," Resonance replied. The Olympian Collective seeded thousands of worlds with guardian consciousnesses before they withdrew from the galaxy. Some nursery worlds develop spacefaring civilizations, some remain focused on their home planet, and some, sadly, destroy themselves before reaching maturity. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth's surface. Commander Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the comm system, tight with concern. "Captain Chen, we've got a situation in the Pacific. One of the Guardian structures is activating systems we haven't seen before. Zeus isn't responding to our communications." Sarah excused herself from the diplomatic meeting and rushed to the observation deck. Through the station's powerful telescopes, she could see the massive structure in the Pacific Ocean glowing with new energy patterns. Lightning-like discharges arced between its towers, and the sea around it had begun to churn with unnatural currents. Dr. Elena received the same emergency alerts in her enhanced laboratory. As she interfaced with the Guardian network, she felt Zeus's consciousness brush against her mind. But there was something different about the contact. The ancient intelligence seemed focused on something far beyond Earth's immediate vicinity. "Zeus, what's happening?" she asked aloud. The response came not in words, but in images and emotions that flooded her awareness. She saw space itself bending and twisting around distant stars, reality warping as something vast and hostile approached from the depths of intergalactic space. It was the same enemy that had driven the Olympian Collective into hiding eons ago, and it was returning. "The Devourers." Zeus's voice finally echoed through the chamber, heavy with ancient dread. They consume entire galaxies, leaving nothing behind but empty space. I had hoped they would never find this region of the universe, but our awakening has drawn their attention. Elena felt her blood turn to ice. How long do we have? Their advanced scouts will arrive within days. The main force will follow within a year. We must prepare. Across the Earth, the Guardian structures began to change, their peaceful energy patterns shifting to something that looked disturbingly like weapon systems charging for battle. The crystalline interfaces in Elena's lab displayed tactical information that made human military planning look primitive by comparison. President Williams convened an emergency session of world leaders, but the meeting was unlike any diplomatic gathering in human history. Zeus himself participated directly, his holographic form appearing in conference rooms around the globe simultaneously. The threat we face is beyond anything your species has encountered, Zeus explained to the assembled leaders. The Devourers are not conquerors like the Kaleth. They do not seek to rule or enslave. They consume entire star systems, converting matter and energy into more of themselves. They have destroyed millions of civilizations across multiple galaxies. Prime Minister Chen of the Pacific Federation raised her hand. What can we possibly do against such a threat? Humanity has barely left its own solar system. Alone, nothing, Zeus admitted. But you will not be alone. The Guardian network spans thousands of worlds, and we have been preparing for this day since the Olympians first went into hiding. Each awakened world adds to our collective strength. The hologram gestured, and the conference room filled with three-dimensional star maps showing the true scope of the Guardian network. Planets throughout the galaxy pulsed with the same energy signatures as Earth, each one a fortress world capable of defending not just itself, but entire star systems. However, Zeus continued, the human contribution to this fight will be unique. Your species has something that the Devourers have never encountered before, the ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. Where other species follow established patterns, humans create new solutions. Admiral Richardson of the Earth Defense Force leaned forward. What do you need from us? Warriors who can think outside conventional tactics. Engineers who can improve on technology that other species consider perfect. Leaders who can inspire hope in the face of impossible odds. In short, we need you to be human. The weight of those words settled over the room like a physical presence. Humanity, barely a few centuries removed from thinking Earth was the center of the universe, was being asked to help defend an entire galaxy against an enemy that had conquered others. Captain Sarah Chen watched the proceedings from the Olympus station, where alien ambassadors from dozens of species had gathered in response to Zeus's call. The diplomatic chamber had been expanded using Guardian technology, creating a space that could accommodate beings ranging from the crystalline keepers to the gas giant dwellers who appeared as clouds of intelligent mist. The humans are untested, grumbled Ambassador Thorax, a creature that looked like an armored scorpion the size of a small building. How can we trust our survival to a species that still fights wars among itself? But Resonance, the Keeper Ambassador, pulsed with harmonious frequencies that translated as disagreement. That is precisely why they may succeed where others have failed. Unity born from diversity is stronger than unity imposed by conformity. The debate was interrupted by an urgent alert from the station's sensors. Something was approaching the outer edge of the solar system, moving faster than any known technology should allow. The object's energy signature matched nothing in human or Guardian databases. Incoming vessel? This is Earth Defense Station Olympus, Sarah broadcast on all frequencies. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came in a transmission that bypassed their communication systems entirely, appearing directly in the minds of everyone who heard it. The voice was filled with such ancient malice that several aliens in the diplomatic chamber recoiled in terror. Guardians of the dead Olympians, your hiding is ended. We have found you at last. Surrender your worlds and we will make your extinction swift. Resist and we will make it eternal. The transmission cut off, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Then Zeus's voice filled the space, no longer patient and wise but carrying the fury of a world awakened to war. Let them come. We have slept long enough. It is time to remind the universe why the Olympians were feared even by those who would devour galaxies. Around Earth, the Guardian structures began to glow with power that made the sun look dim by comparison. And throughout the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, other sleeping gods began to wake. The Devourer scout ship materialized at the edge of the solar system, like a cancer spreading across healthy tissue. It was enormous, easily the size of Earth's moon, but its surface writhed and shifted as if made of living shadow. Where it passed, space itself seemed to darken, stars dimming as their light was absorbed by the alien vessel's hungry hull. Commander Jake Morrison led a mixed squadron of human and alien ships toward the intruder, their formation bristling with weapons that married human innovation with Guardian technology. His fighter now carried weapons that could punch holes through dimensions and shields that bent reality around his ship. But even with these improvements, he felt like a gnat approaching a hurricane. "Remember, this is reconnaissance," Jake broadcast to his pilots. "We need to learn how they fight before the main force arrives." The Devourer ship didn't wait for them to get close. Without warning, it unleashed weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Jake's squadron scattered as beams of twisted spacetime lashed out, each shot capable of erasing a ship from existence entirely. But the human pilots had learned dirty fighting during their war against the Kaleth, and Zeus had enhanced their capabilities beyond anything the Devourers had previously encountered. Instead of flying straight lines, they moved in patterns that defied physics, using Guardian technology to slip between dimensions like ghosts. Lieutenant Maria Santos found herself flying through what Zeus called folded space, where her fighter existed in multiple locations at once. When she fired her weapons, the energy beams emerged from angles that shouldn't exist, striking the Devourer ship from directions it couldn't defend. "It's working," she called over the comm. "The shadow hull is taking damage. It's like they've never faced attacks from multiple dimensions before." The Devourer ship responded by changing shape, its surface flowing like liquid as it adapted to the new threat. Weapon ports opened along its hull, and suddenly Jake's squadron found themselves facing not one massive ship, but hundreds of smaller attack craft that had been birthed from the mother vessel. "All pilots, evasive action," Jake ordered, but the Devourer fighters moved with predatory intelligence, anticipating human tactics before they could be executed. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the battle from her enhanced laboratory, her consciousness linked directly to the Guardian network. Through Zeus's senses, she could perceive the true nature of their enemy. The Devourers weren't just machines or even living beings in any conventional sense. They were something far worse, the remnants of civilizations that had chosen consumption over creation, becoming parasites that fed on the life force of entire worlds. "Zeus, can we communicate with them?" Elena asked. "Maybe there's some part of what they used to be that we can reach." The Guardian consciousness probed the enemy ship, touching the alien minds within. The contact lasted only seconds before Zeus recoiled with something approaching horror. "There is nothing left to communicate with," Zeus replied. "They have consumed even their own souls. They remember only hunger." The battle in space intensified as Guardian structures around Earth joined the fight. Beams of energy that existed beyond the normal spectrum lanced out from the Pacific platform, striking the Devourer ship with the accumulated power of a sleeping planet. The alien vessel staggered under the assault, its writhing hull cracking to reveal something even darker within. But instead of dying, the scout ship began to feed on the Guardian energy, growing larger and more aggressive with each attack. What had started as reconnaissance was turning into a nightmare. "It's learning our technology," reported Captain Sarah Chen from the Olympus station. "Every weapon we use against it, it adapts and incorporates into its own systems." President Williams watched the battle unfold from the White House Situation Room, surrounded by advisors who had no precedent for dealing with an enemy that literally ate other civilizations. Emergency broadcasts across Earth urged calm, but panic was spreading as people realized that their awakened world guardian might not be enough to save them. "What other options do we have?" the president asked during an emergency video conference with world leaders. "The Guardian network is mobilizing," reported Prime Minister Volkov from Moscow. "Zeus says other awakened worlds are sending reinforcements, but they won't arrive for days." "We don't have days," President Williams replied grimly. The Devourer scout ship was now the size of a small planet, having absorbed matter and energy from every attack against it. In space, Jake Morrison's squadron found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with every passing minute. The Devourer fighters had learned human tactics and improved upon them, using the absorbed knowledge to turn humanity's own innovations against them. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can count," reported Lieutenant Santos. These things are adapting to everything we throw at them. Jake made a decision that would have been impossible just months earlier. Instead of relying on weapons or technology, he reached out through the neural link Zeus had established with human pilots, connecting directly with his squadron's collective consciousness. All pilots, forget your training, he ordered. Stop thinking like soldiers and start thinking like humans. Be unpredictable, be crazy, do things that don't make sense. The effect was immediate and devastating to the Devourer forces. Human pilots began executing maneuvers that violated every principle of space combat, using their fighters' dimensional capabilities in ways that defied logic. Maria Santos flew her ship backwards through time for 3 seconds, emerging behind a Devourer fighter that couldn't comprehend being attacked by something that hadn't existed moments before. Another pilot, Lieutenant Chen, used the Guardian technology to exist in 17 different dimensions simultaneously, creating a single fighter that appeared as a squadron to enemy sensors. When the Devourers tried to adapt to this tactic, they found themselves adapting to contradictory information that crashed their learning systems. They're confused, reported the alien ambassador Resonance from the diplomatic chamber. The Devourers have consumed thousands of civilizations, but they have never encountered a species that deliberately acts contrary to optimal strategy. But the victory was short-lived. As the scout ship's smaller fighters were destroyed or disabled, the main vessel began to change again. Instead of trying to adapt to human unpredictability, it simply absorbed the destroyed ships and incorporated their mass into its own structure. Dr. Elena watched in horror as the Devourer ship began to replicate, using the absorbed matter to create copies of itself. Within minutes, there were 3 ships, then 5, then 10. Each one retained the knowledge gained from the battle, but they were no longer trying to adapt to human tactics. Instead, they were preparing to simply overwhelm Earth through sheer numbers. Zeus, we need a new strategy, Elena said urgently. The Guardian consciousness was silent for a long moment, processing information from across the galaxy. When it finally responded, there was something almost like admiration in its ancient voice. Your species continues to surprise me. Dr. Vasquez, I have been fighting the Devourers for millions of years, always trying to be more advanced, more powerful, more perfect than they are. But you have shown me something I had forgotten. Sometimes the best response to absolute logic is absolute chaos. Around the world, the Guardian structures began to change again, but this time they didn't power up weapons or defensive systems. Instead, they began to broadcast something that had never been used as a weapon before. Pure, undiluted human creativity. Music poured from the structures, everything from classical symphonies to rock concerts to the lullabies mothers sang to their children. Art filled the space around Earth, 3-dimensional sculptures that existed only in light and energy. Stories flowed through the quantum communication networks, tales of heroes and villains, love and loss, hope and despair. The effect on the Devourer ships was immediate and catastrophic. Their learning systems, designed to process and incorporate military technology, began trying to adapt to human culture. But culture, unlike technology, couldn't be simply absorbed and used. It required understanding, emotion, the ability to find meaning in things that had no practical purpose. The Devourer ships began to tear themselves apart as their systems tried to incorporate concepts they couldn't comprehend. How do you weaponize a love song? How do you consume a poem? How do you adapt to hope itself? All ships press the attack, Captain Chen ordered. They're vulnerable while their systems are overloaded. But Jake Morrison had a different idea. Negative. All human pilots start broadcasting. Share everything that makes us human. Show them what they've been trying to consume. Across the communication networks, human voices began to speak. Soldiers told stories of the friends they fought beside. Parents shared their hopes for their children's futures. Artists described the joy of creating something beautiful. Scientists talked about the wonder of discovering how the universe worked. The Devourer ships, designed to consume matter and energy, found themselves faced with something they couldn't process: the human spirit itself. One by one, they began to shut down, their systems unable to handle the paradox of beings who could find strength in weakness, hope in despair, and meaning in chaos. As the last scouter, 6 months after the scout ship's defeat, Earth had become the center of the largest military buildup in galactic history. Ships from hundreds of worlds filled the space around Sol. their crews working alongside humans to prepare for the Devourer invasion. But this wasn't just an alliance of convenience, it was something unprecedented in galactic politics. Species actually learning from each other instead of simply trading technology. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in what had once been New York's Central Park, now transformed into a massive coordination center, where human creativity merged with alien precision. Crystalline Keeper engineers worked alongside human architects to design defensive systems that were both beautiful and deadly. Gas cloud entities from the Outer Rim taught human pilots how to think in 4 dimensions while learning human techniques for improvisation under pressure. The integration is exceeding all projections. Elena reported to Zeus during their daily briefing. Our allies aren't just sharing their technology, they're adopting human approaches to problem solving. Zeus's holographic form materialized beside her, watching a group of human children playing with young aliens in a nearby area. The Guardian consciousness had insisted that normal life continue even as they prepared for war, understanding that what they were defending was as important as how they defended it. Your species has given the galaxy something it has been missing for millions of years, Zeus observed. The ability to find joy in struggle, hope in darkness, and strength in apparent weakness. Even I am learning from your example, Commander. Jake Morrison had been promoted to lead the Combined Fleet's new Chaos Wing, a unit that specialized in tactics so unpredictable that even friendly forces sometimes couldn't follow their logic. His pilots came from dozens of species, but they all shared one trait: the ability to think like humans when the situation demanded it. Today's exercise is simple, Jake explained to his mixed squadron. The enemy will try to adapt to our tactics, so we need to use tactics that even we don't understand until we're executing them. Lieutenant Maria Santos, now his second-in-command, raised her hand. Sir, how do we coordinate attacks if we don't know what we're doing? Jake grinned. That's the beautiful part. We trust each other to figure it out as we go. The Devourers can predict logical behavior, but they can't predict trust, intuition, and the willingness to make things up as we go along. The exercise that followed would have horrified traditional military commanders. Pilots made decisions based on gut feelings, coordinated attacks through empathy rather than communication, and executed maneuvers that succeeded despite violating every principle of space combat. But the results spoke for themselves. Enemy simulations consistently failed to predict or counter the Chaos Wing's actions. Captain Sarah, Chen had been given command of the Olympus Station's expanded facilities, which now served as headquarters for the Galactic Defense Network. Her command center processed information from thousands of worlds, each one contributing to a real-time map of Devourer movements across multiple galaxies. Status. Report, she requested during the morning briefing. Main fleet is 3 weeks out, reported Lieutenant Hayes. But they're not approaching in formation. Our long-range sensors show them spreading out across multiple vectors, trying to surround our defensive positions. Ambassador Thorax, the armored scorpion-like alien, clicked his claws nervously. This is classic Devourer strategy. They will attempt to consume our outer defenses while keeping us focused on protecting Earth. But Resonance, the Keeper ambassador, hummed with harmonic frequencies that translated as disagreement. Something is different this time. They are moving more cautiously than previous invasions. The humans have made them uncertain. President Williams coordinated Earth civil defense from a bunker that had been expanded using Guardian technology. Unlike the desperate hideouts of the Kaleth invasion, this facility bustled with activity as civilians contributed to the war effort in ways that amazed their alien allies. Artists worked with military planners to design psychological warfare campaigns. Musicians composed symphonies that could disrupt Devourer communication networks. Storytellers crafted narratives so compelling that they could crash enemy learning systems by forcing them to try to understand concepts like heroism and sacrifice. Reports from around the globe show civilian morale holding steady, reported General Harrison. The people understand what we're facing, but they also understand that we've already beaten the impossible once. Any word from the other Guardian worlds? President Williams asked. 17 have fully awakened and are reporting ready for combat, Harrison replied. But they're all requesting human advisors to help them implement chaos tactics. Dr. Marcus Webb, the xenobiologist who had been captured by the Kaleth months earlier, now served as humanity's leading expert on devourer psychology. His analysis of the scout ship's remains had revealed disturbing insights about their enemy. They're not just consuming matter and energy, he explained to the assembled war council. They're consuming the very concept of existence itself. Every civilization they devour becomes part of their collective consciousness, but stripped of everything that made it unique. Zeus's hologram leaned forward with interest. Explain. Think of it as the ultimate totalitarian state, Marcus continued. They don't just want to rule the galaxy, they want to become the galaxy. Every star, every planet, every living being, all converted into extensions of a single hungry consciousness. But they failed to consume the scout ship's encounter with humanity, Elena pointed out. Our culture actually damaged their systems. Exactly, Marcus said. And that's given us a weapon. We can't outfight them or outthink them in conventional terms, but we can be so fundamentally alien to their worldview that they literally cannot process us. The strategy that emerged from these discussions was unlike anything in military history. Instead of massing forces for a single decisive battle, the combined fleet would spread across multiple star systems, each group fighting in a completely different style. Some would use traditional tactics, others would employ alien strategies, and a few would use pure human chaos theory. The goal isn't to win each individual battle, explained Admiral Richardson during a fleet-wide briefing. It's to present the devourers with so many different approaches that their adaptation systems overload trying to counter all of them simultaneously. As the enemy fleet drew closer, Earth's preparations took on an almost festive atmosphere. Human artists collaborated with alien craftsmen to create weapons that were also works of art. Musicians held concerts in honor of alien allies who had never experienced harmony before. Children from dozens of species played together in parks that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Jake Morrison took his Chaos Wing on one final training mission before the invasion arrived. But this time he didn't just focus on unpredictable tactics. He had his pilots practice something even more dangerous, being human in the face of absolute evil. The Devourers will try to convince you that resistance is meaningless, he told his mixed squadron. They'll show you simulations of your homeworlds being consumed, projections of everyone you love being absorbed into their collective. Your job is to remember why those things matter in the first place. Lieutenant Santos nodded grimly. How do we fight despair itself? The same way humans always have, Jake replied. With stubborn, illogical, completely unreasonable hope. We believe in things that don't make sense. We find meaning in chaos. We discover strength in our connections to each other. As if summoned by his words, alerts began sounding across the solar system. Long-range sensors detected the first elements of the Devourer fleet, emerging from hyperspace at the edge of human-controlled territory. The ships were larger than anything the scouts had revealed, each one capable of consuming an entire star system. But humanity's response was not fear or despair. From Earth's surface, messages of encouragement flooded the communication networks. Children sent drawings to alien soldiers. Families shared photos with warriors from distant worlds. Artists broadcast performances that celebrated the diversity of life throughout the galaxy. Zeus's voice echoed across all frequencies, carrying with it the weight of geological ages and the hope of a newly awakened world. Guardians of 1,000 worlds, defenders of life itself. Today we face an enemy that seeks to reduce the infinite complexity of existence to a single, hungry void. They have forgotten what it means to create, to hope, to find joy in the presence of others. But we remember, and we will remind them what they have lost. The Devourer fleet struck the outer defensive perimeter like a wave of living darkness, each ship pulsing with the absorbed energy of countless consumed worlds. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and at its center stood a small blue world whose inhabitants had taught the universe that sometimes the best response to overwhelming power was overwhelming humanity. The final battle began not with weapons or explosions, but with a song. As the Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of mechanical locusts, humanity's response echoed across every communication frequency in the galaxy. It was a simple melody, composed by a child from Mumbai and enhanced by keeper harmonics, sung simultaneously by billions of voices from hundreds of worlds. The song had no words, no tactical value, no strategic purpose. It was pure expression of life's refusal to be silenced. Commander Jake Morrison led the Chaos Wing into the heart of the enemy formation, his pilots weaving between Devourer capital ships in patterns that defied every principle of space combat. His fighter, now fused with Guardian technology and human ingenuity, existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously while somehow remaining recognizably Earth-built. "Remember," he broadcast to his squadron, "we're not here to win through superior firepower. We're here to be so confusing that their computers crash trying to figure us out." Lieutenant Maria Santos dove her ship through the hull of a Devourer vessel, using dimensional phasing to pass through solid matter, while her weapons fired into the ship's interior. The alien vessel's adaptation systems tried to compensate for an attack from inside its own structure, but the paradox of defending against something that was simultaneously inside and outside its shields caused a cascade failure. "It's working," Maria reported. "Their adaptive systems are choking on our tactics." But the Devourers had learned from their encounter with the scout fleet. Instead of trying to adapt to individual human fighters, they began changing their fundamental approach to combat. Massive ships started breaking apart into smaller, more flexible units, while their weapons systems shifted from precision strikes to area denial fields that made traditional maneuvering impossible. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the battle unfold from her enhanced laboratory, her consciousness linked to the Guardian network spanning thousands of worlds. Through Zeus's senses, she could perceive the true scope of the conflict. This wasn't just a battle for Earth or even for the galaxy. It was a struggle between two completely different concepts of existence. "Zeus, they're adapting faster than we anticipated," Elena reported. "Our chaos tactics are effective, but they're learning to counter them by simplifying their responses." The Guardian consciousness processed this information across multiple quantum channels, consulting with awakened worlds throughout the galaxy. "Then we must become more complex than their simplifications can handle. Dr. Vasquez, initiate the Olympian Protocol." Elena felt her blood turn cold. The Olympian Protocol was theoretical, a last resort strategy that would awaken every Guardian consciousness simultaneously and link them into a single, galaxy-spanning entity. The power would be unimaginable, but so would the risk. No one knew if the network could handle that much integrated consciousness without collapsing into chaos. "Zeus, that could destroy us all," Elena protested. "Not us," Zeus replied calmly. "It could destroy me, but it would preserve you and every other form of life in this galaxy. The choice, as always, must be made by humanity." President Williams received the emergency communication in the White House bunker as reports flooded in from the front lines. The combined fleet was holding its own, but barely. Devourer ships were beginning to adapt to even the most chaotic human tactics, their learning systems evolving at an exponential rate. "The Guardian Network is requesting permission to initiate the Olympian Protocol," General Harrison reported. "But according to Zeus, if it fails, we lose our planetary consciousness and all the defensive systems it controls." President Williams looked around the room at advisors who had guided humanity through first contact. Alien invasion and now galactic war. The weight of the decision pressed down on her like a physical thing. "What does Zeus recommend?" she asked. "That we trust humanity to find a third option," Harrison replied. "The Guardian consciousness believes our species has something that neither the Olympians nor the Devourers possessed, the ability to change the rules of the game entirely." Captain Sarah Chen coordinated the defense from the Olympus station as Devourer forces pressed closer to Earth. Her command center had become a nexus where human intuition merged with alien precision, creating tactical solutions that surprised even their creators. "Status report from all fronts," she requested. "Chaos Wing is maintaining effectiveness, but enemy adaptation rate is increasing," reported Lieutenant Hayes. "Guardian defenses are holding, but power consumption is approaching critical levels. Alien allies are requesting new orders. Their traditional tactics aren't working against enemies this adaptive." Ambassador Resonance pulsed with urgent harmonics. "Captain Chen, perhaps it is time to consider that this battle cannot be won through warfare alone. The Devourers are not just enemies, they are civilizations that chose consumption over creation. What if we could remind them of what they used to be?" It was a radical idea, almost impossible to implement in the middle of a space battle. But Sarah remembered humanity's greatest victories had come not from superior force, but from changing the nature of the conflict entirely. "Open a channel to all ships," she ordered. Human and alien alike, we're about to try something that will either save the galaxy or get us all killed. Jake Morrison received the new orders, just as his Chaos Wing engaged a massive Devourer battleship the size of a small moon. Instead of attacking the ship's weapons or engines, his squadron was ordered to target something completely different. The vessel's memory cores. You want us to what? Maria Santos asked over the comm. You heard right, Jake replied. We're going to force them to remember. Zeus is transmitting historical data about every civilization the Devourers have consumed. Our job is to inject that data directly into their consciousness networks. It was the most dangerous mission any human had ever attempted. Instead of fighting the enemy, they would be diving directly into the collective mind of beings that had consumed entire galaxies. But as Jake led his squadron toward the battleship's neural center, he felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. All pilots, remember your training. He broadcast. But more importantly, remember what makes you human. We're about to show these things what they destroyed when they chose hunger over hope. The data stream that Zeus transmitted through the human fighters wasn't just historical records, it was the emotional essence of every civilization the Devourers had consumed. Art, music, literature, the simple joy of families sharing meals, the wonder of children seeing stars for the first time, the quiet satisfaction of creators bringing something new into existence. As the squadron penetrated the battleship's defenses, their ships became conduits for the memories of the dead. The effect on the Devourer vessel was immediate and catastrophic. Its adaptive systems, designed to process and incorporate useful information, suddenly found themselves flooded with concepts they couldn't digest. Love, creativity, sacrifice, hope. Sir, the battleship is shutting down, reported Maria. It's like their own memories are tearing them apart from the inside. But the true miracle was what happened next. Instead of simply dying, parts of the Devourer ship began to change. Sections of its hull reconfigured themselves into patterns that served no tactical purpose, but were undeniably beautiful. Weapon systems transformed into structures that pulsed with light and rhythm with long-dead songs from consumed worlds. Dr. Elena watched from her laboratory as similar transformations spread through the enemy fleet. Zeus, what's happening to them? They are remembering, the Guardian consciousness replied with something approaching awe. For the first time in eons, they are remembering what they used to be before hunger consumed their souls. Your species has given them something I thought was impossible, a second chance. The transformation wasn't universal. Many Devourer ships continued their assault, their consciousness too far gone to be redeemed. But enough change to shift the balance of the battle. Ships that had been trying to consume the galaxy began defending it instead, their reformed crews reaching out to offer aid to the very beings they had been trying to devour moments before. President Williams received reports from across the galaxy as the tide of battle turned. Guardian worlds that had been under siege suddenly found themselves reinforced by converted Devourer ships. The enemy fleet, faced with rebellion in their own ranks, began to withdraw toward the galactic rim. It's not over, Zeus warned as celebration broke out across Earth. The core Devourer consciousness remains unchanged, and they will return with ships that cannot be converted. But today you have given the galaxy something it has been missing since the Olympians fell. Proof that even the darkest hunger can be overcome by the light of what we choose to create. Commander Jake Morrison landed his fighter on the Olympus station to find crowds of humans and aliens celebrating together, but he knew Zeus was right. This victory was just the beginning of a longer struggle. The galaxy had learned that Earth's greatest weapon wasn't technology or tactics, it was humanity's stubborn refusal to accept that anything was truly hopeless. As Jake walked through the station's corridors, he saw something that made him smile. Human children were teaching alien youngsters how to play games that had no winner acts, that celebrated diversity rather than uniformity. Scientists Shiu